Trump announced his border deal with Mexico, a tariff pause. Guys, I am always down for the concept of pausing the tariffs before they actually have to get signed into law. You get what I mean here, guys? But either way, this is a suggestion via Discord. Let's check it out. Let's jump into it, guys.
We begin with this Fox News alert. President Trump has the world's attention now. He came through on a campaign promise, hitting Canada, Mexico, and China with tariffs to protect Americans from the flow of illegal immigrants and fentanyl in this country.
Right.
And we can now report Mexico and Canada are leaning into Trump's art of the deal.
Oh.
The president of Mexico,
I thought they weren't going to do that.
Claudia Sheinbaum, spoke to Trump and is saying she will send 10,000 Mexican military to their side of the southern border. That's meant to assist with the border crisis left behind by the Biden-Harris administration.
Okay.
Trump says they agreed to pause any tariffs for 30 days.
Right, just make sure it's actually happening.
You are in the Faulkner Focus.
Guys, I'm going to be honest. Based off that statement here, and the statement that was made, I absolutely am happy about that, guys. Now, listen. When Biden was in office, he really did not do much to actually stop the border. Now, obviously, things could be said for what he did in the countries where the people are coming from. We're not going to take that away from him in this context here. But Americans like to see things happening, so guess what's happening? If you don't do anything to visually show that you're trying to stop people from entering into the country, then people are going to think you're doing nothing. This is why we all think he did nothing, right? But I'm definitely glad that Mexico's actually stepping up and doing something, because I'm not sure any other country would be completely, fine with the hordes of individuals just walking through their country. But for some reason, Mexico has been for a very long time. So I'm definitely glad that they're actually trying to do something to mitigate the issue here, guys.
The president also just spoke with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and we'll talk with him again today in a few hours. Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy. Peter, a lot of movement today.
Just in the last few minutes, Harris, we found out how much it costs to get rid of a 25% tariff for a month. The cost is 10,000 Mexican troops, and President Trump himself just went live confirming this. He's saying, I just spoke with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. It was a very friendly conversation wherein she agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border separating Mexico and the United States. These soldiers will be specifically designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants into our country. We further agreed to immediately pause the anticipated tariff for 1 month, during which we will have negotiations headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and high-level representatives from Mexico. I look forward to participating in those negotiations with President Sheinbaum as we attempt to achieve a deal between our two countries. And the president deployed some of his economic advisors to the shows this morning to explain that this wasn't about punishing consumers, it was about something else.
Oh, yeah, the big picture here. Like, what can they do? Those troops will legitimately do the things that we cannot do based off of our Constitution.
President Trump was absolutely 100% clear that this is not a trade war, this is a drug war. There are perhaps 100,000 people last year that died of fentanyl, and the fentanyl is coming in across the Mexican and Canadian borders. 80, 90, 95% of Mexicans want the drug war to end, and the same is true in Canada.
The only event on President Trump's schedule later today is an event at 3 p.m. celebrating the Stanley Cup win of the Florida Panthers. That's right around the time that we understand he's also supposed to talk to Prime Minister Trudeau. We will see if Trudeau is able to head off the tariffs there for a month, something that we have not heard about yet. Is he also going to talk to China's President Xi, who he is threatening with 10% tariffs as well?
I think that's less likely.
All right, Peter, thank you so very much. There will be, as Peter's pointing out, if something doesn't get worked out with Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau and President Trump, there will be a 10% tariff on Canadian energy imports and a 25% tariff on all other Canadian imports. And there would have been on all Mexican imports at midnight, as you know.
Okay, so what I'm seeing by this here is that there will definitely be no type of caveat for the energy. I was definitely hoping that that was going to be a thing, because that absolutely is what Americans will feel. Every single American, regardless of president, whoever's in office, they're basically always just going to say the same thing. Guys. Whenever gas prices go up, the more complaints people are going to make. The energy import tax specifically would be that, guys. That would be a pretty big bump in how much we pay per gallon.
Mexico just moments ago said 30 days, give us 30 days to work this out. I'm paraphrasing, but that's effectively what's happening. There will also be an additional 10% tariff on Chinese imports. And you just heard Peter ask, so are they going to come to the table? Well, we'll see. The day is young, and there's a lot of talking going on. Steve Hilton, Fox News contributor. Steve, people are moving, and I think you have a pretty clear-eyed idea of why.
Because you have someone in the White House who is taking control, he's in charge, he's at the height of his powers, he's commanding the American stage, the world stage. And by the way, this is what we saw before. So the reason people are so completely kind of losing it over the weekend ever since these tariffs is just completely incomprehensible to me. I remember it very clearly last time round, because then the real issue with Mexico wasn't just fentanyl. It was also, of course, immigration and the caravans and all of that. And I remember that President Trump announced 25% tariffs on Mexico via a tweet, as it was then called, on a Sunday night just before we went on air with my show. And we covered it, and within days, you saw exactly the same kind of quick reaction. The then president of Mexico sent troops to their southern border, and it's happened again. And here is someone who's completely ripping up the playbook of how things operate in terms of relationships between countries. I remember, of course, being back in the day I was in 10 Downing Street in the UK, and I saw how it was done, the traditional way. And governments, when there's an issue with another country, and they send their representatives, and you have diplomats, and maybe in 6 months there's some kind of summit, and then they issue working papers, and maybe in 2 years something happens. With President Trump, he's not interested in any of that. That's why people elected him, to get things done quickly. And just look at the results within practically 24 hours in terms of the fentanyl issue, which, by the way, he understands so deeply, because he understands the communities most affected by it.
You know, it's great to get your front row seat to history from David Cameron's leadership in the UK and apply that now. Our brand new American citizen and friend, Steve Hilton, we really appreciate that. Please sit tight with me as
Bro, is that a California pin with the American flag? That's a weird one.
I work through this, because you said 24 hours.
I didn't know they liked the flag out there. I apologize.
Because they were still kind of trash talking with, we're coming with our own, we're doing this tariff against the United States. Treasury Secretary, who'll be a big part of this, Scott Bessent, will be in a major position in upcoming trade talks. And he wrote a recent opinion piece about this. He says, the truth is that other countries have taken advantage of the United States' openness for far too long, because we allowed them to. Tariffs are a means to finally stand up for Americans. He also said this during his confirmation hearing.
One will be for remedying unfair trade practices. Two,
there's a lot
maybe
of those.
For a more generalized tariff as a revenue raiser for the federal budget. Tariffs can be used for negotiations, whether it's for Mexico on the fentanyl crisis. I think you and the American people should think about those three broad categories.
Okay. Guys, really quickly, tariffs specifically, yeah, they can be used for negotiations, but just be fully aware that they're basically bully tactics. All right, they are. That's what they are. But they are currently and pretty much on average used for those purposes. He's correct. But I just want to point out, it's a bully tactic.
Wow. I tell you, the ball is moving. Now tell me what you forecast with China, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're going to see the same. And of course, it's vital because the precursor chemicals are coming from China. So you need to work on every aspect of that supply chain, as it were. And again, look back what happened last time. Is just before the COVID pandemic threw a wrench in everything, but President Trump had negotiated with China, despite all the rhetoric, we're going to have third world war with China, the critics were saying, but he had a good relationship with President Xi. They knew where each other stood, and he negotiated a trade deal with China. It was many people don't remember because days later, we were right in the thick of the pandemic. So I'm very confident that these two can do business with each other, and President Trump will convey to the Chinese regime that you can't keep getting away with this, and we are serious. And already, by the way, they've closed a technical loophole that has enabled for decades now the import of cheap products from China, avoiding duties and taxes. They've already done that. No one even noticed. So
was that recent? Because there are a lot of websites where you can buy a lot of things directly from China, directly. And I'm not even sure they're going through any type of like search or seizure type of thing. I don't think so. And a lot of these websites sell like off-brand and like fake things in general. So if that's actually closed, that's a big deal for specifically for copyright infringing type things.
This new administration is deadly serious about all of this.
Well, look, there's one more ground that they can hit with China, and you alluded to it a little bit.
Let's see how long Timu is there.
The COVID pandemic, and that is that most of the materials to make some of our medicines, particularly for diabetics and all sorts across the spectrum, some of the most expensive medicines to make and for Americans to buy, they're made in China.
Right.
So, I mean, there's the pressure that they have put on us. We can alleviate for ourselves if we can do some of that in this country. And Trump is also putting out that olive branch. Cuts you down to 15% taxes if you start to do some of that stuff here in the United States. There's a lot he comes forth with. Look,
that
real
actually
quickly,
would be a good deal.
the Prime
They would
Minister of
accept that.
Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, will be the first visit in the White House for his second term as president, President Trump. What do you make of the future and Hamas's hostage release and ceasefire deal at this point?
Well, you know, this is harder. This is harder because you're not dealing with rational actors like the leaders of major countries, whether that's China or Mexico or Canada. You're dealing with a murderous death cult in the form of Hamas, and there's very little leverage that anyone there has over them, particularly in their completely weakened state. Despite that, however, the minute that you saw President Trump, he was President-elect Trump, actually, when he got involved, you saw progress in a way that you hadn't seen for over a year from Biden, who was just there in the White House doing who knows what, falling asleep half the time, doing nothing. And then President Trump actually got things moving. And so I am optimistic. I would say I'm less optimistic because it's harder. He's got less leverage than with these other countries, but I don't think there's anyone on earth that you would rather have meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister tomorrow and trying to get the second phase of this deal done than Donald Trump.
Okay, guys. Okay. Let's move on. All right. So when it comes to tariffs specifically, I'm definitely glad that Mexico was able to come up with something that was kind of valuable to offer. They themselves would seriously have the ability to just completely halt the flow of illegal immigration coming into the United States of America. They can halt it. They can do more than we can do because of our Congress. Just be fully aware, okay? So I'm glad that they offered that up. I think that's probably the best thing. Now, when it comes to the concept of America first, right? And not wasting money in all these foreign countries that really have nothing to do with us where we are. I think Israel should definitely be on the list of the countries we're wasting money in. I don't understand. Whenever you guys send me Fox News things, right? It's always like, let's save all the money, but just give the money to Israel. It's like, what is this, bro? Okay, I'm like extremely fiscally conservative. I don't see why we're giving money to them neither. But I don't know, maybe there's something I'm missing. Help me out in the comments. Help me understand what's going on here. Okay, because that's not our problem. It's not. Homelessness in our country is our problem. Okay, the flow of illegal immigration is our problem. The economy is our problem. Israel is not, guys. But either way, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Let me know, guys, because maybe I'm missing something here. If there's some information that tells me that like something that I'm missing, please elaborate, because I just truthfully don't see it. Like, I don't know why we're giving money to the Ukraine. Well, okay, there are a couple of like geopolitical reasons why that would make sense, at least, right, for the Ukraine, slightly, but still not so much. It's too much money. Okay, Israel, the same. What's going on here, guys? Either way, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day thoroughly. The fact that you just made it to the end of the video says a whole lot, actually. We have a couple other channels. MrLboyd Music, MrLboyd Movie Reacts, along with MrLboyd Discusses, where I just generally speak about the things that specifically matter to me. But in the meantime, I'll catch you guys later.